Welcome everybody to another one of our micro lessons. My name is Rick. I am the community manager here for Growth. And today we're going to be running a really exciting micro lesson talking about future-proofing your business with creativity. With me, I have Senior Professor HubSpot Marc, and hope you guys are excited. Please, as the lesson goes along, drop your questions in the chat, and I'll make sure to get to them during the Q&A portion. But until that, Marc, you can go ahead and take it from here, my friend.
All right. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. This should be a fun one. I like that it's nice and short, so you just squeeze it in. It might be like a little lunch break for some people or an afternoon coffee break, depending where you're coming in from. But it is nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me here. We are totally just going to jump in. So you made me make a who am I slide, which is hard because the only thing I really identify as is like I'm at HubSpot, I love donuts, and I'm a dad. But this is my who am I slide. I have the privilege of working at HubSpot Academy. For the folks that might not know, HubSpot is one of the world's kind of leading CRM and marketing solutions for growing businesses. And I work at the Academy where I help enable people and teach them how to use HubSpot. My main job in the world is helping people think creatively and bring their ideas to life. If you know me, you know I love donuts. You can bribe me with a donut anytime, any day. I also run a podcast called the Think Differently Podcast. It's a weekly show that helps to explore those that are challenging the status quo and how they do their work and choose to live their life. And that is what we're here to talk about today, is about future-proofing your business with creativity. Because if there's one thing I've done throughout my career, it is be creative in lots of different ways. So let's get going. These are the main topics we're going to cover today. You did a great job of setting this up for me, Richard. And so these are kind of main topics. We're going to talk about strategies to unlock creativity for your business, tactics that you can actually walk away here. Like in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to give you tactics, things that you can take and you can do them this afternoon with your team, with yourself, or with others. Some methods to cultivate an innovative company culture and practical next steps for future-proofing your business. I actually was super duper excited to make this deck for you all and this presentation. So let's rock and roll. Number one, we have to define what creativity is. You can't get to a creative culture. You can't be creative if we don't know what creativity is. And so this is the way that I start to define creativity with folks, is that number one, creativity is the beautiful and subtle and artful and scientific mix of curiosity, empathy, and strategy. Let me explain. Number one, to be creative, this starts from a place of curiosity. We see the world differently than other people. And you might be curious about a challenge you see in your business, a problem that you see internally with your organization or teams, or if you're not in business, as you go through life, you are kind of driving along this road, and eventually you'll see a pothole big enough, a bump tall enough, or a tree in the middle of the road obstacle enough that you are curious to want to solve that challenge. So that is the first thing we need for creativity, is a sense of curiosity. And if you say to yourself, oh man, I'm not curious at all, no sweat. We have methods to help you cultivate curiosity. The second thing that I think is essential for creativity is to have a level of empathy. And this is both empathy for yourself, so that you give yourself some grace as you're going through the creative process, but also empathy for what we call our end users or our customers, our clients, the people whose problem you're trying to solve with your business or your service. You're going to see some great examples. Spoiler alert, if my buddy Steve is on, I put you in this deck and you are a great example of empathy for end users. So once you're curious and you see the world through a different lens where you can start to have ideas and see challenges you want to solve, then you need to fall in love and build empathy for the people whose problem you're trying to solve. And then the third thing that you need to have to be creative is some sort of strategy. Now, this could be strategy of how you're going to do your creative work. It might also be a strategy of how you're going to bring that idea to life. But if we kind of just sit in this area of curiosity and empathy, but we don't have a framework to bring those ideas to life and to start to test them out, we're kind of just sitting in our basement all day alone and not building anything for actual people. And so that third piece of creativity around strategy is essential. It's kind of like if you've ever joined like a gym, you can't just like walk into a big gym with all those machines and stuff and not know what to do. You need some guidance. You need a strategy on what to do. And that is an essential element of creativity. Now, the other thing that I like to think about is a strategy to unlock creativity for your business. Now, this is something you could take away and you could literally do it in 10 minutes from now. And it's a technique called the 5 whys. Now, this is a strategy to unlock creativity and empathy for your end users. And so here's the example. Let's pretend for a minute you were hired by a sports apparel company and they were like, hey, Mark, we want you to design a shirt for this guy. He is a weekend warrior. He is a tough athlete. He's a father, but we need you to design a line of shirts targeted at this dude, right? So if I go and I talk to this dude and I say, hey, big, strong, tough, tattooed dude, you're a weekend warrior. You go out and play, rugby or football or lacrosse or whatever on the weekend. Why do you do this? That's the first why. He might say something like, well, bro, I'm an alpha male. This is what I do. Look at me. I crush it every weekend. That's why I do what I do. And then I could say, oh, that's interesting. So why is it important to you to be a weekend warrior? Why is it important to be an alpha male? And he might say something, well, I like the way I feel. When I exercise, I feel good. I feel strong. I feel empowered, and I feel better in my life. That's our second why. And then I may say a third why. I'd say, interesting. Well, why is it important to you to feel so good? Was there a time you didn't feel good? And then he might say, actually, yes. When I was a younger kid, I was a little overweight. I got bullied a lot and it didn't feel good. And I was kind of isolated from my peers growing up. And so I made a decision myself. I was going to take a healthy lifestyle and I was going to try to be the best version of myself. And then I hit him with the third why or the fourth why. And I say, interesting. Why is it important to you to live a healthy lifestyle? Then he might say something like, well, my father actually died of a heart attack before my high school graduation. My father was a little overweight, and I don't want to be like that for my kids. And I say, then I hit him with the fifth why. And I say, whoa, I'm so sorry for that. Let me ask you, why is it so important to not follow in your father's footsteps? And then I get to the fifth why, which is because I just want to be alive to walk my daughter down the aisle. Now, that is a very different answer. When I compare the answers I got from the first why to the fifth why, now I can design very different. If I was going to design for the dude on the left, I might design like a t-shirt with like skulls and lightning bolts and the sleeves cut off. And it might say something like alpha bro. But if I'm designing for this guy that just wants to walk his daughter down the aisle, that shirt and that apparel would look very different. It might be a set of shirts for a father and his kids and his spouse so they can all exercise together. It might be a shirt that might have some element of family on it. So the question and the strategy here is, who are you trying to design for? And how can you get to the core of what their real needs are rather than what they tell you at the first why? So again, this is called the 5 whys. Such an awesome activity. You could literally do it this afternoon. You could do it right now if you wanted to. It's called the 5 whys, and it's a great strategy to show you how to get to the core needs of your end users. Now, this is my buddy Steve. This guy is the best. I grew up with Steve. He was an entrepreneur from the minute I met him when we were like 5 years old. And Steve on the left has a company that makes that thing on the right. Now, you might look at this little thing and be like, what even is that? Well, Steve is a serial entrepreneur. He owns restaurants. He owns commercial real estate businesses. He is an amazing entrepreneur. But one thing that he noticed is that when he would go to commercial construction sites, there would always be holes in the ground. And he noticed, and he would overhear the construction team say, oh, we got to build a cover for that hole. And it was a headache. They'd have to take wood and they'd cut out wood and put it over the hole. And in order to be like OSHA compliant, you have to cover the holes in the floors of construction sites. And so Steve got a little curious and he started talking with more and more people. He started observing and talking to the construction workers, and he realized this covering of holes is a big headache for construction workers. And so Steve is creative, he's empathetic, and he's strategic. And he said, what if we built a better solution to cover the holes in construction sites and make people OSHA compliant? It saves them time, it saves them money, they're compliant. And so Steve started a company that makes adjustable covers for construction site holes just to solve the need for the construction workers. This is a great example of finding whose problem you want to solve, construction workers on residential or commercial construction sites, and creating a solution that makes their lives better. Steve did this. He has this company. We'll drop the name of the company in the chat and a link to them so you can go check them out. But this is a great example of a strategy to unlock business growth, is to really think about your end users and how can you make their lives better. Next, we want to check in on tactics to tackle common creativity blocks. All right. These are kind of like 4 of my big ones. Creativity blocks, you know what that is. You're sitting around, you think you might have an idea, but you don't know what to do next. Here's what you do next. And again, if you're here and you're watching and you're taking notes or you're recording it, these are such good ideas. Sorry if I'm a little biased. All right, so number one, if you are designing anything, a product, hey, Coleman, hey, I got a toddler back there. If you are designing something, let's start thinking of the rule of 3 clicks. So in like website design, when you're designing websites, you want to make it easy so that people don't have to click more than 3 times on the website to get what they need. Make your design for everything that simple. Keep it super simple. So if you're designing a product, make the on button easy to find. If you are starting to just think of an idea, think of it simply with the rule of 3 clicks. Next, if you're just stuck, all you got to worry about is taking the next step. Okay. It's easy to have an idea. It's easy to get distracted. It's easy to want to build a million features on your like design. Just worry about the first step, because after you take the first step, you're going to take the second and the third and the fourth. So when you are overwhelmed with creativity, you're blocked with your creativity, and you've got all this stuff in your head, just stop and say, what's the first thing that I need to do? And just do that. Take a little Post-it note, put it on your laptop, put it on your whiteboard, and say, just take the first step. That's good advice. Next, when you're ideating, you have an idea. You're like, oh my gosh, is this a possibility? First thing you should do, go to Canva, go to PowerPoint, go to Google Slides, make a 3-slide deck. This is a slide deck that has 3 slides. Slide 1, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Slide 2, what do you think your solution is? And step 3, why are you best equipped to solve this problem? This will make it very constrained and focused for you to take your idea, share it very, very quickly with other people in 3 slides and say, hey, what do you think about this? Right? Like Steve, my buddy Steve, if Steve made a 3-slide deck and showed it to a group of, people on the construction site, they'd be like, oh yeah, totally. It sucks making the covers for these holes. It's hard. It takes money. Oh, your solution totally seems to make sense. And as you start to get that feedback from your users, then you can start figuring out what they need and what they don't need. So here's the idea. If you are stuck when you're ideating, just take out a piece of paper, take out Canva, and make a 3-slide deck and make it simple to convey your idea. Next, if you're just stuck, you've been working on something with your team and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere, the number one thing I say is start constraining. Constrain your time, your money, your people, your technology, or your resources. Constraint is an accelerator of innovation. I will say that again because I said it years ago and I really like the way it sounds. Constraint is an accelerator of innovation. Anytime your team comes to you and says, hey, our deadline just got pushed to next Friday, things are going to start happening. They say, hey, budget got slashed, things are going to start happening. So if you are just feeling stuck, you need to stop and say, we need to start sucking in time or sucking in the resources or stop using more technology. And as you constrain what you have access to, this will fuel your creativity and your innovation. So again, don't try to throw more money at the problem here. Try to take away money, try to take away time and constrain you and your team to start thinking a little bit more creatively. Now, we next want to talk about methods to cultivate an innovative company culture. And just like we said, creativity is the mix of curiosity, empathy, and strategy. We also need to define innovation so we know what we're trying to build. This is an old definition of innovation from the design firm IDEO that I found back in like 2006. And so the definition of innovation here, it's not something new and something really cool. It's something that is desirable by your users, feasible for you to build, and viable, meaning your idea could actually live in the environment that you're designing it for. So before we start talking about innovative company culture is not ping pong tables. It's not kombucha on tap. It's not remote work. Innovative company culture is saying we are going to solve problems for people that they desire. We're going to make them feasibly and responsibly, and we're going to make them to live and iterate over time. So here's some methods. These are 3 of my favorite methods for helping cultivate an innovative company culture. The first is human-centered design, also known as design thinking. And the big idea here is, my dad always says, keep your eye on the prize. But here we're saying, keep your eye on the customer. You should fall in love with your customer, because the first step in human-centered design is developing empathy for your end user, right? Don't fall in love with your idea. Find the people whose problem you want to solve, fall in love with those people by building empathy for them. So we start by interviewing, we start by observing these people, walking a mile in their shoes. Again, if I was my buddy Steve, I'd hang out on a construction site all day. I'd hang out around the hole in the ground and see what people actually do to start to build empathy for them. I'd see how much time it takes them to make this cover for the hole. Next, I want to define the challenge that I'm actually trying to solve, right? I am trying to help people on construction sites save time, save money, save resources, and be OSHA compliant by covering the holes. Next, you move into ideation, where you come up with as many ideas as you can. No judgment here. We've got lots of great rules for ideation. And then once you select the top 2 or 3 ideas from your ideation, you move into the prototyping phase. This is where you are building the scrappiest, duct taped together version of your idea. You're testing it then with people, and then you're going back and you're going through that loop to make sure your idea is meeting the needs of people. The big thing about human-centered design is that it's centered around humans. So again, we're not falling in love with ideas, we're falling in love with people and the problems we're trying to solve for them. The second method I love for creating an innovative company culture is just lean principles. If you've ever read Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, this is what it's built on. It's on the build, measure, learn loop. So the idea here is if you have an idea, a creative idea that solves someone's problem, rather than trying to build the whole thing at once, build what we call the MVP, right? Your minimally viable product, the ugliest, scrappiest version, you build it. You give it to somebody and you measure anything you can. You measure the questions, you measure kind of the inputs that they're giving you. From there, you're going to learn something. And as soon as you learn something, you're going back to build. And you're stuck in this build, measure, learn loop. And you are working on these like 2-week sprints. So rather than taking 3 years to build something and then you put it out to market and no one wants it, and you've wasted all this time and this money, we live in this quick 2-week sprint where you're always building something, measuring it, learning, and then going back to rebuild every 2 weeks. That way, by the time you bring your idea to market, you've gotten hundreds of rounds of feedback from your end users and you build what they want. The idea here is like, I cook all the food in my family. I want people to taste the sauce as I'm making it. So by the time I plate my dinner and I give it to them, they've already tasted it along the way and I know it's what they want. So this is the idea. This build, measure, learn loop is a way of helping your customers, your users, your prospects taste the sauce while you're making it. So by the time you deliver it to them, it's exactly what they want. The third method to cultivate innovative company culture is something called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I could give a whole 3-hour thing about this. The idea here is that this is literally an operating system, a way to organize your business for maximum innovation and maximum clarity. So the big idea with EOS is that you have a visionary in your organization, the person that has all the ideas, the big thinker. That person needs to take that vision and translate it into a readable and repeatable statement for the whole company to know. So here's what's in the visionary's head. Let's document it. Next, let's make sure we hire the right people. We've defined what jobs we need. We define what jobs to be done we need, and we know what is a good person for each role. Next, everybody should have some piece of data that they're reporting on. Again, the classic example is if you have people answering phones, maybe one piece of data they're reporting on is, I need to answer the phone after 3 rings. And I can come back to you at the end of the week and say, hey, I took 400 calls and 350 of them I answered on the 3rd ring. You are on track. So everybody should have some piece of data they're accountable for. The fourth thing is issues. Every company has issues. It could be issues interpersonally with people. It could be opportunities you see for a new kind of product or market fit, or there's just issues with running a business. And if we don't document those issues, they eat away at our heart, they eat away at our head, and they kind of like depress people over time. So you need to have a list of issues where anybody can say, hey, I got an issue with this meeting we have every week. It kind of stinks. It's a time suck. Nobody brings nothing good out of it. We got to document issues so we can identify them, discuss them, and solve them. Then you need to document your processes so that everybody that joins your company knows your 3 to 5 main processes and how to do it. From there, you start to gain traction, and you are operating in the entrepreneurial operating system. I hope that the author of that book thinks I did a good job with that definition. Next, let's quickly talk about, these are practical next steps you can do today to future-proof your business through creativity. So don't be scared, but be proactive. And here's what I mean by proactive. If you're not working to put yourself out of business, somebody else is. And so my practical tip for you is to actually set up time every week or every 2 weeks to try to put yourself out of business. I tell this to people all the time. Set up a 30-minute or a 45-minute jam session every Friday afternoon. You get everybody from different parts of your business together or some trusted advisors. And all you're trying to do is say, hey, here's where our business is right now. Here's where I think it could be in the future. Let's start having some playtime. Let's start thinking about what is the next disruption coming in our industry and our business, and how can we start to future-proof ourselves around it? Because you can either be proactive or you can be reactive. In business, you want to be proactive. You want to solve problems before they begin. You want to anticipate customer behaviors and challenges before they come up. And my number one rule for this is set up time to put yourself out of business. Number one is it helps build excitement for people. People start to look forward to this kind of creative kind of playtime where kind of nothing's off limits and it's just free-flowing ideas. Next, it enables great ideas. You never know where ideas are going to come from. Sometimes the greatest ideas that help companies grow and scale, they don't even come from the product or the business team. It might come from an outsider or somebody that doesn't even touch that part of the business. And next, it helps all of your team members being comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is what you want for everybody in your team. So the practical step here is set up time every week, every 2 weeks for you and your team to try to put yourself out of business, because from those small ideas, you'll start to identify new areas of opportunity to help your business grow. All right, dude, that's all I got. That's me. I'm Mark. I'm in Chicago. If you like this stuff, scan that QR code with your phone. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I love talking about this. I love working on this stuff. You can tell I get excited easily. This is my jam. I would love to help anybody. If you have any ideas, hit me up. I like talking to people. And now I think we're going to turn it over. Oh, sorry. Join the Redwood Grove community. Go ahead and scan that QR code for Growth. Growth is an awesome HubSpot Solutions partner. Great people doing great things. And now I think it's time for Q&A.